to do before you get so busy in the comment section. It seemed, right, that Tifnumbu's $9 million paid to the lobbyists in America have started work. Or should I say it's been activated indeed. For those who have not really been paying attention to what is going on in Nigeria, especially those of you who have become the victims of media blackout, which is intentional, the controlled media in Nigeria who remained very much like, compromised. For those of us who have been following, right, we are very much aware of the efforts of the Christian Association or the group of Christians in the Middle Belt part of Nigeria in trying to tell the world what they are suffering in the hands of the Fulani jihadists, and as well as how those in authority continued to shield these terrorists from arrest or prosecution while people are being chased away from their ancestral homes. So when the United States of America's Congress started having interest in this due to other Christian bodies, even in the US itself, right? Pushing for the attention of those in authority in America to please beam your supposed searchlight on what is going on in Nigeria. So the data that is currently being used by the United States government authority in their supposed motivation for why the government of Nigeria will be held responsible for what is really going on in Nigeria, the killings of Christians in Nigeria. This data comes from this world Christian body, right, that collated and said, those who are being persecuted for their beliefs, Christians who are being killed because they are Christians all over the world. Nigeria alone took almost 80% of the total victims in a year. So they rolled it back last 5 years, last 10 years, and the number is staggering. In all of this, there were government officials from the United States who have been very much in touch with the authorities in Nigeria, okay, trying to ask them to act. Donald Trump, during his first term, even challenged openly in the Oval Office, right? He challenged the then president of Nigeria, Buhari, that why are the Christians being killed in Nigeria and you have done nothing? Then Buhari said it was just Fulani, others, and farmers' clashes, something that Americans didn't believe from then on, right? So all of these have been happening in the last 10 years. So finally, right, the attention of the US government has finally been drawn to it. Rather than for the Nigerian government to also change tactic and say, you know what, the party is over and the terrorists should be dealt with. They hired a PR company, lobbyist company. Lobbying is, in this sense, right, it's actually bribery. So they hired a lobbyist company to help them change the narrative. And this was after months of sending their own hired thugs online and offline to go all over the place to try to change the narrative. Hopefully the American public will grab it and use that against Donald Trump. None of that worked. So until when they said they have paid out $9 million to a PR company in America to help convince lawmakers, bribe them if possible, to change the narrative from Christian genocide to just terrorism, which is easier. Nigeria is bound to get sanctioned, including some government officials in Nigeria are bound to be sanctioned internationally by the United States government. their assets confiscated. So all of these are still what to happen. For now, the opportunity given to Nigeria is to actually do something and deal with the terrorists and be seen to be dealing with them. Not just that. The victims of terrorism in Nigeria, okay, especially the Christians in the middle belt part of that country and others, should be ensured to be returned back to their ancestral lands, homes, rebuilt for them by government. There is nothing like that going on, all right? Or rather, they wanted the narrative to change. So, what do you think it would? I mean, how do you think it's going to probably be easier? Tinubu's government and this New York Times reporter ignored all of the documented evidence presented before the European Union, European Parliament. Is that what you call it? European Union Parliament in Brussels, right? At the same time, the United States Congress, Foreign Affairs Committee on Foreign Affairs or thereabouts, who have taken in eyewitnesses, survivors, victims who have given testimonies of what they experienced. We all watched some of them. They ignored that. Now they are telling us that when Donald Trump finally ordered the airstrikes against the terrorists in Sokoto on the 26th of December 2025, this New York reporter, New York Times reporter, right? Their West African, their African region reporter said, no, Donald Trump bombed the terrorists in Sokoto, relying on the intel of a screwdriver reseller. That's a screwdriver salesman. That's actually how she described him. He said, a screwdriver salesman in Onitsha is the person who gave Donald Trump, the American government, the intel. Like Donald Trump used the intel from this man who continued to write on social media that Christians are being killed in Nigeria. You know what I mean? And is linked to an inter-society organization. They called his name. They have his name there. They said his name is Emeka. One Mr. Emeka, Umeagbalasi. Emeka Umeagbalasi, a screwdriver salesman, according to this New York, New York reporter, that is the man who gave Donald Trump the intel used in striking the terrorists in Nigeria. Now, for context, some might be like, so, no, don't say that. Do you know how propaganda builds up? And then the resentment, the hatred, the tribal hatred, as well as the violence that could follow. Do you know how they build up? They build up through articles like this, headlines, narratives like this, because they are always not an end in themselves. They are just a means to an end. So what the terrorists are doing, the Lakurawa terrorists, ISWAP terrorists are doing in Sokoto, right, is not kind of like hidden. The destructions they have brought is not hidden. The US government said, for the time being, the US government commissioned some reconnaissance flights that, according to them, took image pictures of the locations of these terrorists, their movement, and the rest of that for days before they finally went there to strike them. The Nigerian government, Tinubu's government, also came out through their Minister of Foreign Affairs, their Minister of Information, Idris. They came out and said the intel used, including the coordination of striking the terrorists in Sokoto, was given to them. They worked together. In all of this, right, a New York Times reporter is telling us that a screwdriver salesman in Onitsha provided this intel, right? And like I said, it is a mean to an end for those who probably understands how this APC does their things. the Igbos in Nigeria, who have been the easy sort of like a target whenever Nigeria criminals, right, whenever they run into a brick wall and they are looking for somebody to actually blame, or yeah, they put it on the Igbos. An Igbo man that complains about the killings in his own place, right? And there is no any American, what have you, operation slated for the eastern part of Nigeria. Suddenly, is now linked to the airstrike that killed the terrorists in Sokoto. Now, you might say, but that's a good thing. But in the Nigeria context, because right now, we have those terrorist sympathizers who have done so much in the last 6 months alone. They've done so much to try to convince the average gullible Nigerian, right, that killing the terrorists or Americans getting involved in killing the terrorists that are killing Nigerians, like mercilessly, is actually an affront on the Muslims in Nigeria, which in itself, if people don't try to stop it, can lead to Muslims, Christians clashes in Nigeria. And we're like, what are you talking about? The terrorists that are killing Nigerians are killing Christians, they are killing Muslims, as you can see, right? And somehow, if you are a Muslim, you should be happy that those who put your own life in danger and the life of others, which you don't support, do not deserve any mercy dealings at all. Why should you get mad that Americans are going to blow up the terrorists that are displacing people and forcing the locals to pay taxes to them? Like, why should you get upset? So now when they bring a narrative that says, also, by the way, also, just a few days ago, when it came to light, the Nigerian government, the Tinubu's government, is paying $9 million to an American PR lobbyist firm to help them change the narrative of Christian genocide in Nigeria. They said the reason why they spent the money was because this redesignation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern was because the IPOB, they lobbied the American congressmen and pressured them, and in fact, made Donald Trump to redesignate Nigeria. And none of these available reports pointed to that. But yeah, they pushed that so far. Now they are pushing it at the international, kind of like using the international platform. And this is one of the reasons why, Donald Trump continued to say, you can't trust the media. Okay, I'm going to share a few things with you. First, there's a man who lost 12 members of his own family, right? His name is Bishop Wilfred Chikpa Anagbe. This bishop was a special guest of the European Parliament, sometimes in November 2025. This is just about 2 months ago in Brussels, where Bishop Anagbe told the European Parliament, right, the genocide going on in Nigeria in detail. He spoke to other bishops, because they are those who have suffered greatly. It is under this ABC that we have seen so many of these bishops or reverend fathers and the rest of them from different parishes in the middle belt part of Nigeria and the heartland of northern Nigeria, who have become victims of kidnappings and beheadings in the hands of these Islamic jihadists. So these people kept pressuring and they kept campaigning for the attention of the world to what is going on in Nigeria, because it's obvious the government of Nigeria, they were in bed with this terrorist. Now, they didn't say that as the reason why United States of America redesignated Nigeria and decided to strike the terrorist in Sokoto. They didn't put that in. I am going to show you. Now, he also went as far as appearing, giving, testimony before the United States of America's Congress on Committee on Foreign Affairs, who actually shown interest in the killings in Benue, in Yewata, in Plateau State, in other areas of northern part of Nigeria. They spoke with the survivors, those who lost countless numbers of their own family members, and those who managed to survive after the entire attacks. And all of this were documented, but New York Times didn't see that. They want us to go to what a man in Onitsha actually said as the intel. So I'm going to start with this. Yeah, the bishop.
Have the privilege of witnessing, the privilege of experiencing. I'm not talking as a privilege of opinion. Mr. Chairman, ranking members, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me back to testify on the escalating crisis of Christian persecution and genocide in Nigeria. 6 months ago, precisely on 13th March 2025, when I last appeared before this committee, I warned that the situation was there and demanded urgent attention. Tragically, the past half year has proven those warnings understated the continued attack on vulnerable Christian villages by the Fulani ethnic militia and their counterparts, both in the middle belt of Nigeria and elsewhere in the country. Since my testimony in March 2025, credible reports from organizations monitoring religious freedom, including Open Doors and our own Justice, Development and Peace Commission in Makurdi Diocese, have documented continuing attacks on Christian villages, especially in the middle belt states of Benue and Plateau, perpetrated by the Fulani militia. Thousands more have been displaced, some adopted or subjected, with entire villages razed and churches destroyed. My own village of Aondana in Gwe West local government was attacked and several of my relatives killed on May 22nd, 2025. An entire convent of Reverend Sisters of the Clarisha Missionary was displaced, along with the local Catholic parish. Within the days following that attack, nearby villages like Naka also witnessed attacks. In fact, on the 24th May 2025, one of my priests, Father Solomon Atongu, was shot and left to die in the pool of his blood, while those traveling with him were adopted. Though he survived the attack, he is unable to walk freely because he has a broken bone. A few weeks before, on Palm Sunday, April 13, 2025, with the attack occurring late that night into the early hours of April 14th, Fulani militants launched a coordinated assault on Christian communities in Plateau State, Nigeria, primarily targeting the village of Zike in the Basa local government area near Jos. This incident was part of a broader wave of violence in the region during Holy Week, targeting Christians as they prepare to celebrate one of the most holy, important feasts in our church. In my own diocese of Makurdi, you are all familiar with the massacres of Saturday, 13th June in Yellowater, where 278 persons, men, women, and children were killed in a manner too gory to describe here by people shouting Allah Akbar, while slaughtering their victims. It took the prayers of the Holy Father Pope Leo XIV on Sunday, June 14th, for the government in Nigeria to even acknowledge this evil. Even so, the federal government still seeks to downplay the numbers and has yet to properly care for the survivors, even as I speak. Adoptions of clergy and laity remain rampant. Priests and pastors are prime targets for elimination. On 17th November 2025, another priest from Kaduna Archdiocese was kidnapped while his brother was shot dead and others taken into captivity. On the same day, a school was attacked in Kebbi State with many kidnapped, and the vice principal of the school was killed. Reports are also rife of the capture of a brigadier general of the Nigerian army with some army officers and soldiers by the Islamists. This is the daily experience of many Christians in Nigeria. Violence is spreading southward, displacing millions and destroying farmland, creating a humanitarian crisis compounded by food insecurity. Attacks by Fulani militants, Boko Haram, Islamic State of West African province, ISWAP, have intensified not only in the Middle Belt and northern states, but spreading southward and targeting Christian communities with impunity. We hoped the CPC designation by President Trump at the end of October might stabilize the situation, but instead it is deteriorating into one of the most later periods for Nigeria Christians in recent memory. Like it is now commonly acknowledged, Nigeria remains the deadliest place on earth to be